Hey everyone, Professor Koval here. I have a quick look for you on an important topic, and that is the difference between substantive law and procedural law. We're going to be seeing this come up again and again over the semester. All right, so what do we mean by substantive law and procedural law? Well, pretty much the words give it away, right? Substantive means the substance. Procedural is the process. Right? So when we're talking about substantive law, we're talking about the part of the law that creates, defines, and regulates new rights, duties, or powers. Whereas procedural law has to do with the process, right? The part of the law that tells you how do you enforce your rights in our court system. Right? So we're going to be seeing substantive and procedural a lot during the semester. It might be easy to think about it in terms of criminal law. Right? You're probably most familiar with it in that way. If you are on trial for first-degree murder, right, the prosecutor is going to have to prove that you committed the murder and that you had a certain mental state when you did it. That's the substance of the crime, right? So the substantive law would tell us what you have to prove to convict someone of first-degree murder. The procedural part is how do you go about doing that? Did the police follow the rules during the arrest or the search? Was the jury biased or unbiased? Did the prosecutor follow all the rules during the trial? All of those rules have to do with procedural law. Okay, so we're not really going to talk about too much about criminal law this semester, but this difference is also important. Sorry, my dog was barking. So substantive, procedural. Substantive tells us the what, procedural tells us the how. And like I said, you can think about it in criminal law, but we're going to see it in civil law as well. Right? So let me just give you a quick example of the difference, of an important difference, or a good example of how the difference occurs in the civil area. Right, so here are two fairly recent cases. Meritor Savings Bank versus Vinson was an important Supreme Court case in 1986. And what it did was it changed the substance of what is meant by sex discrimination. Right? So under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, we're going to be seeing this when we talk about employment law, we will see that it is illegal to or unlawful to discriminate on the basis of sex, right? Well, this case, the Supreme Court said hostile work environment, right? Sexual harassment that reaches a certain level is a type of discrimination. So the Supreme Court in that case changed or expanded the definition of what sex discrimination is. And it changed the behaviors that people are allowed to engage in. It changed the substance of the law in regards to sex discrimination. So that would be an example of a change in substantive law. On the procedural side, you may or may not have heard of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. This was a law passed by Congress in 2009 that changed the process by which you can bring a complaint for sex discrimination. Lilly Ledbetter had worked for a company for 30 years, and after all those years, she found out that she was being paid about half of what a man in the exact same position had been paid all that time. Is that sex discrimination? Certainly. But the law at the time, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, said that if you're going to bring a lawsuit for sex discrimination, it has to come within 6 months of the first discriminatory act. Well, that happened 30 years ago. She brought the claim and they threw it out. They said, no, this doesn't meet the procedural requirements of the law. So Congress passed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act to say, no, not 180 days from the first event, but now you can bring the lawsuit 180 days after discovering the discrimination. Right? So a big change in the procedural rules that allow you to enforce the Civil Rights Act of 1964. All right, so substantive, substance, procedural, process. We're going to see these time and time again, and that's all for this quick look. Bye.